Guys, I want to thank the sponsors of the podcast. I want to thank GoHunt.com, my friend Cody Nelson, the glassing guru, the optics authority. He's the optics manager at GoHunt.com. If you have any interest in buying optics or have any glassing questions, whether it be tripods, spotting scopes, rifle scopes, range finders, anything to do with glassing, give Cody a call, 702-847-8747. That's extension 2, or you can email him at optics@gohunt.com. You can also send him a text or call him on his cell phone at 602-399-3699. Guys, right now at GoHunt.com Insider, you can take advantage of the free trial. Go to GoHunt.com/JScott. You're going to be able to take advantage of a free trial of the Insider. GoHunt is always adding more value for their Insider members. They've now added real 3D maps as a part of Insider for no additional cost. What an incredible value. Very soon they're going to have their mobile app up as well. Go to GoHunt.com/JScott and sign up for a free trial. If you're already an Insider member, it's automatically part of your Insider membership. And you can just go to the Maps tab up at the top once you sign in as an Insider. I also want to thank KUIU Ultralight Hunting. That's the gear that I wear on all of my hunts. To find out more, you can go to KUIU.com, KUIU.com. They're a direct-to-consumer company. They sell everything off of the KUIU.com website. I also do a lot of question and answer on my Instagram where I'm answering questions about guys wanting to know about gear about KUIU, so tune into my Instagram. I want to thank KUIU for their sponsorship. I also want to thank Phonescope.com. Use the JScott20 promo code. You're going to get a 10% discount on all orders. Again, thanks to all the sponsors of my podcast. Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today I've got my friend Greg Krogh of Mogollon Rim Outfitters. Greg, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Jay. How you doing?
Good. I know you were in Mexico, and I just got back from Mexico, and it's always fun going down there, but we've got a deadline here for the Arizona Elk and Antelope applications coming up here the second Tuesday, or the first Tuesday in February. I believe it's the 9th is the deadline. We just had a big storm. We were in very dire need of moisture and very dry, but we just had a big storm. Curious your thoughts and how they've possibly changed over the last, say, 7 days with this storm and your outlook for Arizona coming up for elk.
You know, I'm in the center part of the state, where I live at about just under 5,000 feet. So I can't speak for like what they got up in Flagstaff, but I know that we were extremely dry. We had some pretty good moisture in December right where I live, but that was it. And it was as dry as I can remember. Feed was in about as bad a shape as I can remember, but we got, I don't know, other parts of the state, but I know we got absolutely pounded on this last storm. We had probably 1.5 inches of rain in the first 3 or 4 days. And then the snow came. And after having 1.5 inches of rain, we had, I think I measured 10 inches one day of snow. Most of that melted. And then the next day I got 16 inches of snow at my house. And then I still have 7 or 8 inches on the ground at my place, 4 days later. It's supposed to rain again today. So I think that moisture is super timely. The only thing that I'm still worried about a little bit is, and you and I have talked about this in the past, like in Nevada, I've always said spring's more important than anything, because a mild winter means the elk come out in good shape or the deer come out in good shape, and then they go into their antler growth healthy. Even if we have a great spring right now, and this is just my opinion, there's no doubt these elk are going into it unhealthy. Does that make sense? More so than other years, because it's been a really dry fall even, so I think all this moisture helps. I still think it's going to be at least an average year if it keeps up, but I don't think it's going to be one of those, no matter what happens from here forward, I don't think it's going to be some banner year. What do you think?
Well, one of the things that, with the feed conditions that I was hearing about in 9 and 10 specifically, and, across some of those central Arizona units, with very, very little feed going into winter, one of the things that I was thinking about this big storm, because, there's places people have reported to me and flagged that, people have gotten between 30 and 45 inches of snow. one thing I was potentially thinking about is body condition going into this time frame, and then you throw on a big, huge storm. I don't, I worry that the elk's body condition might be fairly poor going into it. Then you throw a bunch of snow on top of it. It could actually make things, pretty rough. I am definitely thinking about how their body condition, and from what a handful of people have told me is that their body condition was not good. So part of me worries a little bit about this actually could cause a lot of stress on them. On the other hand, I'm thinking any moisture we get is fantastic considering how dry we were. And I don't think anybody really knows until we see this, the set of antlers they get grown next year and just see what their body condition's like. But I do think, we're looking at average, where before I don't think we even had a chance to get up to average antler growth with the conditions that we had and how dry it was. But certainly a big storm like this, and then another storm predicting coming in tonight, and 80-90% chance of precip across the whole state tomorrow, it makes a huge difference. Something you said there that I think is hugely important is you had the first couple of days of the storm, and you said there was 1 inch to 1.5 inches of rain. Then it laid down snow on top of that, and it melted. Then it laid down, 10 inches to a foot of snow that's still on the ground. That just allows that moisture from the rain to just sit underneath that snow and soak into the ground. So I think that's a great sign.
Yeah, I think regardless of what it does to antler growth, short of killing animals, even if it's not as good for we needed this so bad, because if we don't get this spring and they come in this poor and then they go, it's just going to be really bad. And I think right now with this kind of moisture we're having, and obviously it needs to continue, but if you look at the forecast, it's showing more and more and more, in the next 10 days, up here we keep seeing, 7 or 8 different days with chances of rain. So if it keeps going, I think it's going to be good. We're going to have a nice wet spring, and I don't see how that's possibly bad. But I do agree with you, and I was kind of trying to say the same thing when you were talking about them going in. If they're going into the antler growth period poor, I didn't mean the snow, but just period, going into the antler growth period in poor shape. Then in the beginning, when all that feed comes up in March, April, May, all that good feed, their body, in my opinion, all that feed is going into their body before it goes into their antlers.
Yeah,
because
sure.
their body's in bad shape.
That's one of the things that a mild winter does, where they can get by and they're not really working very hard for feed, and then all of a sudden you get those late spring, February, March, get those storms where then their body condition is good and they can immediately pour it into their antlers. I think that's exactly what you're trying to point out, is that they may take a while to get their bodies up to prime condition before they can start pouring it into their antlers. Have you got any indication from these storms in Nevada? Did Nevada get dumped as well and get some pretty good moisture?
I don't think they got as much as this, were not in the areas that I hunt, but they did get moisture. So, and I don't think Nevada is as where I hunt in Nevada and that lower stuff. I mean, a lot of that stuff's desert. So it's, most of those deer are not in that country where all that snow is hitting right now, so I think it's more important to have just the more the better, down in that desert. So, but they definitely did not get as much as we did here, but they did get some. I know parts of Nevada up, over the Sierra, they're getting pounded, Yeah,
but I saw on the news last night they were predicting 100 inches of snow in
and see, now you're getting into
Mammoth.
where it's, now it's getting into negative when it's that type of cold and snow. That I think that hurts. But like where I'm at, I'm more in the central, eastern, and southern part of the state. I'm hunting mostly desert, high desert, so it's not nearly as detrimental if there's a big snowstorm. Does that make sense?
For sure. Looking at the Arizona elk applications, we've got the early seasons, we've got the archery seasons, we've got the early firearms, whether it be muzzleloader or rifle, and then we've got the late elk seasons. You have guided here in Arizona, I want to say 25 years, you could probably correct me, but a long, long time. What are some of the units that you are looking at for the archery hunts? And let's talk about some of those.
Right now I have different groups of guys applying and, with different mindsets. Some guys want to go for, the all or nothing type units, and some guys want to go hunting every 8 years, or 8 to 10 years on archery. So I kind of mix it up in the premium type units. And that's one thing I want to touch on too. I didn't even, when you started talking about that, like the premium, one thing that's going to help this year more than anything, the one silver lining is last year, because it was such a weird rut, if you remember, a lot of bulls made it.
Yeah.
The carryover, I think, is going to be, it just seemed like a lot of the hunts, a lot of the bigger bulls made it. And there's going to be a lot of carryover this year, more so than normal. So I'm hoping that offsets some of the moisture issues. There's going to be a little bit older bulls making it this year. At least that's my hope. And so I really like, I had a lot of people putting in for 9 this year and 10. We hunted 9 last year on the early hunt and the archery hunt, and we ended up killing 2 big bulls. But I think I'm sure you knew a lot of people up there in 9 last year. It was a tough hunt, and a lot of bulls made it. So I'm thinking this year there's going to be a lot of age class carryover. So that's going to help. Even if antler growth isn't at the top, there's going to be older age class bulls, I'm hoping. I like 23 late. Is where that's what I would consider the premium ones, but shoot, those are taking 19 points now to draw, which is unbelievable. I never thought I'd see the day there'd be general late hunts that were taking 19 points.
Yeah, I know it's kind of getting a little crazy for sure. So you talk about 9 and 10 as our archery hunts that you like, and you talk about 23 late hunt. I know you also do some hunts in some of the more opportunity units like 6A. What are your thoughts on that unit?
I think they're good units for people that are trying to, I tell guys, if you're trying to shoot bulls and you have lots of opportunity, but then you have to deal with things like people, because it's got higher numbers of people, but you're hunting bulls in the 300 to 320 class typically. But you can draw them sooner, and units like 5B, we did 5B South and those types of units also, those also are very similar. If you don't want to wait 20 years, you can put in for those.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking.
You just can't have the same expectations as a 9 or a 10 when you do it.
Sure, I'm looking at, like you mentioned, 5B South. I'm looking at the Go Hunt Insider, and for a non-resident, 13 points, you can be guaranteed a 5B South tag, and a 6A hunt with 9 points, you can be guaranteed a tag. Whereas you look at some of the 9 and 10s, and you're up there in that, it looks like, let's see here, Unit 9, you're looking at 23 points for a Unit 9 tag. So what you're saying is you either have to come up with a strategy where you're in that 8 to 12, 13 point range, or you're in that 23 to 26 point range where, you're able to hunt 2 times or possibly 3 times for the same amount of wait time as a 9 or 10 tag.
Right. And I think the 6A ones miss. I should call those. I need to call those guys and go out and see if they would know the answer to this. But I know that due to COVID and some others, I know that last year in 6A, I know multiple people that had higher points that drew and turned their tags in. I think that's why it went down to 9. Yeah, because they reissued tags. Does that make sense? But I don't know if that's how it would work, if that would show up in that stat. But we had some guys that drew a group of 3 that all turned them in because they got COVID right before the hunt, and then they reissued them. So I don't know if that makes a difference in that stat or not.
Yeah,
because normally 6A is a 10-point unit on normal years. I'm not saying it couldn't drop, but yeah.
Sure. You guys last year on the late hunts, you really liked the late hunts. Talk a little bit about your history with Arizona late elk hunting and the success that you guys have had on those late hunts.
I really like them because I really enjoy glassing, and I enjoy everything about the late hunts. They're very rugged, so you can get away from people. If you get the right clients that are in good shape that can get around. Historically, I would say we've almost. I joked around about it with Jeff yesterday and called him, and I'm like, because we have a client that can either draw an early hunt or he can draw that late hunt in 23, and we were trying to decide. And I told the guy for the unit he was talking about doing the late hunt the early hunt, I convinced him in my mind that I would rather have him be in that late hunt in 23. And I thought, man, maybe I'm not thinking this clearly. And so I called up a couple of my guides and asked them and said, which tag would you rather have if you were going to guide a guy? Would you rather have this tag or this tag to kill a bull of this size? And ironically, both of them agreed too. They like that late. We really like that late hunt. You can look at a lot of elk. You're not relying on, I mean, there are some, detriments as far as you have broken antlers and stuff like that you have to deal with, but you don't have to rely on the rut. You don't have to rely on that type of stuff to find big bulls, and for example, 9 last year, man, when they weren't calling, I was up there with Randy Elmer and his brothers and nephews and cousins. I mean, we had a lot of guys out there looking, and man, they were on some really big bulls. And all of a sudden, when they quit calling, I mean, it's like when the switch goes off and they're not in glassable country, it doesn't matter how big they are. If they're not talking, it's like a needle in a haystack. Yeah. And I'm not saying there aren't parts you can glass, but the specific big bulls that they had found preseason that we were hunting with my client, it was crazy when that quits calling it, and then 7 days goes by in a hurry. You spend a couple of days when they're not calling in the thick stuff, and pretty soon you're running out of time. And we got lucky and found a really big bull in some glassable stuff, and we were able to kill it. But you don't run into that on the late hunt. Those are the things I like about the late hunt is you're always going to be able to glass, in case it's really bad weather. But even that's going to be one day. You're not typically going to have a week of bad weather in Arizona. So I just really like those late hunts because you can glass them and you can find them. You can weed through a lot of bulls, and if you're in a good area, you can do well. And I've just always really liked doing those. We've been doing those late hunts for at least 36 years now. We've been doing the late hunts, and I just love them. I mean, they're probably my favorite hunt of the year, other than they're really, as I get older, I like them less as far as the packing because those bigger bulls in the rough country. But that's where all the young guys come in.
Yeah, for sure.
Not so much Jeff. Jeff hates it, but for some reason, Matt Kelly seems to enjoy it. I can't figure that out. He makes me feel so old. What's that?
He enjoys the pain.
I don't know. It's like either that or he just thinks I'm so old he feels sorry for me. But like the last couple times, I feel like I have nothing when we pack. He always fills his pack and tries to politically be correct, like he doesn't notice I don't have any, that he's not putting any in mine, So, and he's not that big a guy. He's just tough.
I'm looking at the point totals here on Go Hunt, and I can't believe it, but that 23 late hunt takes 19 points as a non-resident to be guaranteed a tag, and 18 points you have a 50% chance to draw. It's kind of crazy to think that the point totals have crept that much, if you will, to get a late season tag. It's mind blowing. It
is. I mean, it wasn't even 6-7 years ago when that was an 11 point.
I was going to say, it seemed like it was just 11, 10, 11, 12 point draw, and now it's a 19.
Yeah, it's for non-resident, it's getting pretty tough. And
are there any units other than 23 for the late hunt that you do like, or do you pretty much stick with the 23 late? That's
the only late hunt I've done for so long. It's just the one we do. I've always done it. I used to do 22, which would be a really, an easy, like a hunter opportunity unit, where I think it only takes 5 or 6 points, or something like that for a non-resident. And I used to do that a lot. And I think that's a good unit for somebody that's just wanting to go late season elk hunting and get the experience of late season elk hunting.
But the quality's gone way down, right?
Yeah, it's not what it used to be. It used to be on par with 23 years ago, but they've just, that was one of the units that was designated as hunter opportunity where they really increased tags. I can remember hunting that unit when there was 50 total tags in it on the late hunt, and now there's 2 hunts with, I don't even know. I'm guessing it's like 800 or 900 or something like that.
Yeah, the tag numbers have really come up. Plus, they have several different hunts in 22.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just lots of pressure, and the quality, the numbers of elk have just gone way, way down.
But it's still something that, a lot of people got upset about that. And don't get me wrong, I think you need to have units where it's trophy quality, but that was a unit that that was one of those things. And I'm guessing that was the Game and Fish's point, was to get more people out hunting, and opportunities. And that was something that I was able to take my kids in that unit multiple times, and I think in 4 years, one of my daughters drew it 3 times, and the other daughter, I think, drew it twice. So that was the neat part about it, for kids and stuff that want to go late season elk hunting. That was a neat, we weren't killing giant bulls. I think the biggest one we killed was 320, but most of them were like 5x5s, just bulls. Sure. but it was fun to do with kids. And I don't want to make it sound like before I wasn't bad mouthing the hunter. I think we need that in some units, just not all of them, and that was kind of the one that the way I see it is they just decided to kind of almost sacrifice that unit for quality for quantity, which has its positives. I've got to do a lot of kid hunts and junior hunts and, people that just want to go elk hunting. It's kind of fun.
For sure. I want to jump off topic here for just a second. Usually in kind of mid-February, early February, we do the Nevada non-resident mule deer draw, in the outfitter pool. We might as well cover it now. For those people wanting to apply, talk a little bit about the special guide draw that's coming up and how people, if they want to apply with you, I know I've been doing it for several years now, how they need to do that, what they need to do to get the form and that whole thing.
Yeah, so that draw is going to open. I got an email the other day saying it's going to be around. I think they're planning on opening up the draw on February 8th, which is a little bit earlier than normal. And I believe it's somewhere around the 9th or 10th of March is going to be the deadline. I don't have it right here in front of me, but it'll be open for about a month starting February 8th. If people want to get involved in that, what the guide draw is they set aside a certain number of tags in Nevada and allocate them to just the outfitters. So we're only competing with other outfitters for these tags. Tags are still very difficult to draw, but they are easier to draw in the units I hunt. I went and looked it up the other day. In the units that I hunt, they're all easier in the guide draw than they are in the regular draw still. So all you have to do is contact me. And then what I do is I would put you on an email reminder list, and then I'll send it out to you with the instructions, and you go directly to my, you log in, and I give you all the stuff you need to do and the units to pick, and you can apply. And then you're only competing against other people that are going on outfitted trips with other outfitters.
Right, so you have a better percentage chance of drawing than if you're putting in the general season, as well as you kind of have a it's in essence you're going into the pool using your outfitter number, and so all the people that apply with you are going to have a guided contract with you that they are in your outfitter
yes,
camp, if you will, and
that's another huge advantage,
right?
Because we usually book up really quick every year. So when you do the regular draw, most people that call we're booked by the time the regular draw. When the regular comes out there, the first hour or two, whatever spots we didn't go on the original hunts, there's no way we can guarantee you can take you if we tell you to put in for these units. But on the guide draw, if you put in with us, you're guaranteed to get a spot. So if you put in with us on the guide draw and you draw, we are going to take you.
Right, and
whereas if you put it on the regular draw, we don't know. It depends on the number of people that drew and all that and how much availability is. But on the guide draw, we're very careful to put into where there's no way we can overdraw it.
And then you also have a bunch of different units to choose from and kind of a hunt strategy. You kind of have a swing for the fences strategy. You kind of have a kind of middle of the road but still harvesting great buck strategy. And it gives guys an opportunity to, let you know where they want to be, and then as far as what kind of bucks they're looking for and what kind of opportunity with the late hunts, the early hunts, and then you kind of have the 5 best choices and you say, this is what we're going to do, right? And then you kind of get if they want to, they're okay sacrificing maybe a little bit of a higher end quality for just maybe a better chance of getting drawn, and then you kind of have it outlined.
Right, and none of the units are poor that we're putting in for. It's just there's the swing for the fence, the guys that have 20 something points and they only want to hit those top units and they want to keep holding out, and those are like sheep odds, some of those. And then there's we give a couple different draw strategies for everybody. We explain to it the types of bucks that we killed the year before, and each one of those, you kind of have an idea going into it. We'll tell you what we killed the year before in those units, and then also what a realistic it's been in the past over, historically. Like, for example, this past year was by far the best year we've ever had. So if I posted all the pictures of that, it would be very misleading, because that's we're not going to have every year like we had last year, and some of those units came off looking better than they probably are just because we had a really good year in them. So we'll still tell you what we got last year in it, so what the high end potential is, but then we'll also tell you when you talk to us about what's realistic to expect in those. So, you're not going in there thinking that, for example, the easiest draw unit a couple of years, 2 years ago, we shot like a 217 buck out of on the easiest to draw tag there was. Well, obviously we don't sell it as a 217 buck hunt. We sell it as a 170 to 190 type hunt,
but that doesn't mean you're not going to try and kill the biggest bucks you can.
Absolutely,
you're just trying to be
right.
Realistic with what the expectations
I'm just giving you, when I put those numbers, that's what we've done historically over the last 25 years in there, in those units. I'll put 170 to 190 is what most people kill in those over 25 years. But, when it's good and we know of big bucks, and there's years where, gosh, that year, last year we had hunts where we were 15 inches higher than our normal average.
Why was it so much better?
Pardon me?
Why was it so much better last year?
Honestly, it was, we caught a lot of breaks. Normally if we know of about 11, 12, 13 big bucks, we'll be, we're hoping we can get in there and kill 3 of them, or 4 of them, that would be incredible success. I'm talking about on the real high end stuff. And last year it felt like we killed every big buck we knew about. It just, we had so many breaks. We had bucks that we missed and lost and, and then didn't see for 3 weeks. And then we decided to go back in there and then with another hunter and he was back in there and we killed him. The guides worked so hard last year. All of my guides, put in so much time scouting last year. So we had more opportunities, I guess, more bucks to go after. I don't know. I can't explain it. We went into it terrified last year. Because the year before last was the best year we'd ever had, on paper. So we went into last year and it was almost like we all needed a pep talk among them. Like, we're just going to try the hardest we can. We're going to put in the most amount of time and we're going to just work as hard as we can. And no one's going to be upset about that, and there's no way we're going to do what we did last year was the mindset, but we're going to try, we're going to put in extra time. So we all put in more time scouting. And then I would say a week before the season started, it was probably the worst season ever of scouting that we'd ever had. Like we just didn't have any big bucks with a week to go before, like in August, and then with about a week before the archery hunt started, Jeff was over there and then Jeff got the ball rolling. He went out one night and saw 2 big bucks somewhere. And then the next day I went somewhere else and found a really big buck. And then the next day Matt found a really big buck. And then the next day Sergio found a really big buck. And all of a sudden we went from having nothing to hunt. I was terrified. I couldn't even sleep 4 days before the archery hunt was going to start. And then all of a sudden we had a surplus of big bucks to hunt. And it just happened like that, and I attribute to those guys putting in all that time, because if they'd only put in, say, 5 or 7 days of scouting, we wouldn't have been hunting those bucks. But because they put in 15 and 18 and 20 and 25 days of scouting, eventually they found some big bucks. And that's what I think happened last year. And then once we found them, every single break that could go our way went our way, it seemed like. There were just some stories that it would take forever to even explain to you, but to tell, but there were some stories you wouldn't even believe about how lucky we got on some of these, on 1 or 2 of the bucks. And don't get me wrong. We got really unlucky not to kill them weeks earlier, deflections and arrow deflection, that kind of stuff. But then all of a sudden the day we killed them should have never happened that day, but it did,
Sure. Do you think the best years of Nevada mule deer hunting are right here, right now? In other words, is it as good as it's been right now?
I would say, I would say last year was. Sorry about that. Someone just came to the door. I was getting. You there?
Yep.
I would say I don't know that it's the best it's ever been right now. I would say the biggest bucks are getting killed right now, Jay, than in the past. But I think a lot of that is due to, the evolution of hunting more than anything. I would say if we went back 15 years ago, I think the bucks, 20 years ago, the bucks were even bigger. We just people didn't know what they were doing back then. Does that make sense?
The equipment and such has allowed people to be better at what they're doing and better optics.
And just knowledge. Just hunters are better today. If you remember 20 years ago, did you ever, I know like I would say, when I started hunting in Nevada, the way I hunted it and guided it was we would go over there and start scouting 3 days before the hunt, in October. And it never even occurred to me to go over there in the summer and find a buck first and,
right.
and then go back and hunt him in October. And then, I learned it from Paul Stewart, that type of stuff, where he would talk about how he'd find a buck in the summer and then go back and kill him in October in the same place. And then, everybody, once that started happening and it opened up how much more time scouting we're doing, and I don't mean me, just across the board, people just started doing more scouting and putting in more time. And it's just people are a lot more serious about it now than they were back then. Back then nobody really scouted, they went up there before the hunt and scouted 3 or 4 days. And, now we have, if I do a hunt in 24, I think this year, by the time the rifle hunt started, I bet I had 40 days in there by the time that rifle hunt started and so in 25 years ago, I would have had 4 or 5,
right.
Just because the way we did it, and it's just different. So I don't think the quality is any better. I just think people know what they're doing more now.
Well, it sounds like Nevada's done a good job of keeping the tag numbers down, and I know it ebbs and flows a little bit, but it seems like historically for the last 30 years, the buck hunting, the mule deer hunting has been very, very good, and it's stayed very, very good. So that's good to hear. So if people want to get a hold of you, Greg, for Arizona elk or for the outfitter pool for the mule deer draw, what's the best way for people to reach out to you and get information, whether it be for Arizona or for Nevada?
There's 2. They can either email me. Do you want me to just give the email, or do you want to put it up, or how do you do that?
Yeah, so give me the email, and I'll also link it up in the show
Yeah,
notes.
the email is GKROGH and then the number 1 at iCloud.com. So gkrogh1 at iCloud.com. Or you can do it on Instagram, which is probably easier for everybody. You just search my name, Greg Krogh, and direct message me on that and tell me what you're looking for, and I'll get back to you right away.
Awesome, buddy. Well, thanks for coming on with us today and sharing about Arizona and Nevada. And if you end up going back down to Mexico, good luck down there. And it's always great chatting. And keep up the good work. It's always fun seeing the success that you and your guides have. And kudos to you and your guides for the work that you guys put in and the great animals year after year. I mean, you've been doing this a very long time, and you still have the passion. You can hear it in your voice. And it's just a testament to your passion for what you do, and congratulations on being able to still be fired up about it after all these years.
Hey, thank you, and thanks for having me on the podcast.
All
Enjoy
right,
it.
take care. God bless.
Take care.